Good afternoon, viewers. I'm Marva Richardson, and I am so delighted. In fact, I hope I don't cry because I've got a very, very, very special program. And before I go any further, I want to thank Shauna Roy for allowing me to have worked with her through the months as we worked for Mrs. Potter and also Mr. Steve Washington. And we kind of merged Upper Room from the Heart. And we went down to my mother's house to do we taped from my mother's home. So I just want to just let her know how grateful I am, and she carried us up until we'll have a program that will be aired this Sunday. So again, thank you to Shauna Roy, and I want to just put out a little plug for her. She's with Breaking Barriers now, and we'll see each other from time to time. But I'm back home, and my train is back from the Heart on Channel 28. And saying that, I am so, I don't know how to act. I'm really emotional. I didn't know that this would happen once I got back on the air. But I've got a very, very, very special person that's with me today. And I just want to not take too long with this opening because there's so much to do and say with this type of program that we're having. But I want to say that I've got the most honorable person, Miss Jane Brady. And the reason why I feel I'm so honored to have her is because years ago, I was with Donyale. I started TV with Reverend Twin Brown. That was my beginning. And then as little time went by, then Donyale picked me up. From Donyale, she told me in one of my interviews, she said, "You're going to interview Jane Brady." I said, "No, I'm not." She said, "Yes, you are. Get out there." That's the way Donyale was, and that's what made me whatever I am today from Sister Donyale. And that interview, once I got on with Miss Brady, it was the most comfortable. She made me so comfortable. We interacted together, and from that, she did become the Attorney General. Had nothing to do with it, but she did. And I'm so honored because I haven't saw her. We did some things with her, you know, as time went on. But she did become Attorney General. Then she traveled in Heights, and she's been a judge. And I think today I was a little kind of, you know, I didn't know how I would act because I said, I didn't know. I said, I wonder if she's going to remember. How am I supposed to act? I was just getting myself all prepared. She's still Miss Jane Brady. She's still the humble. She's delightful. You know, I don't even know how to act. So I just want to just, you know, let you know that. And then again, like I said, I'm a little emotional and a little excited. I might talk a little bit too much, but that's what I do. And then I want to go on because they're going to do their own interacting today. I turned on the set Sunday, and I saw this other lady who I'm getting ready to introduce to you. And I said, I could pick, you know how I am, Mr. Steve, I pick you up from the heart. I can feel your realness. That's the name of my program, From the Heart. And I picked this lady up, and I believe her name is Donyale.
Yes.
And you were so for real.
Thank you.
For real. And when I found out through Mr. Washington that you were to come on today, oh boy, there I go again. And I have these are two very, very, very special women. I don't want to blow this because I'm going to let somebody do the job for me today, and I'm just going to sit back, listen, and learn. But what I want to say to one of my mentors before I go any further is Evangelist Willa Ford. She had been mentoring me through many things that I've went through, and I won't go into that. That's another book at another time. And I haven't really been talking to her a lot because I've had so much in my mind dealing with people, this one in that ear, that one in this ear, and there were so many people. Mr. Washington, I've talked to you about this and had said to me, don't. I'm to hold their confidence. And one lady said, I didn't hear you say it, I didn't hear you say it. They would tell me things and didn't want me to take it back. And confidence to me is golden.
Yes, it
People
is.
don't understand that. And Evangelist Ford, sure, I could tell her and she would never take it back, but they asked me to keep their word. Even though, you know, and Evangelist Ford, I've told her, don't read anything into this. It's just who I am. If people hold me and ask me not to say anything, I'm locked in. And my husband will say to me, he said at times, I'm going to tell you something. And he said, he doesn't want me to say anything. That's all you got to say. I'm locked in. But I want to say to Evangelist Williford, thank you for mentoring me. I think I turned out pretty good.
I think so.
You know, I've learned to deal with people. I've learned to sort it out, figure it out, work it out, and come to my own terms and my own decisions. And I want to thank her and honor her for all she's meant to me. Now, let me take a deep breath. With that being said, I have got to put this in the hands of someone that I've wore you down to death, haven't I? Mr. Washington, Steve Washington, has been with me for about maybe, how many years?
I'm not sure. It's been a
I think
while now.
it's been about maybe 5, 6 or more years. And I picked him up in the hallway at Channel 28. And I was just, and he to me, I thought he was Miss Brady, forgive me, I thought he was a snob. I'm being for real. Remember, I saw you and I invited him to come on. Little did I know I would get to really like him, and I began to learn from him. We became, friends. We began to interact, and then all of a sudden, I don't know how it was, he became host and co-host of this show, From the Heart. And with that being said, because I'm getting dry, I'm getting excited because there's so much I want to learn from today. You know what you're going to do today?
I have no
I'm going to
idea.
fix you. You're going to host the show.
Oh, wow.
And I want you to, I'm going to step back. I've said enough. I've said all I needed to say. I might want a few words after closing. But I want you to take over and talk to Miss Brady and Miss Donyale and say what needs to be said. Mr. Steve Washington.
Good afternoon. And thank you for all that you do in the lives of people. I'd like to thank you, television community, for allowing us, out into your bedrooms, your living rooms, your dining rooms, to talk a little bit about what's going on in Wilmington, Delaware, our communities, our state, and perhaps our country. We want you to really listen to some of the knowledge that we're going to give you and understand the reasons as to why we have to make change. I want you to understand that if it doesn't have good change, it just doesn't make good sense. That's mathematical for those of you who didn't understand it. Let me say it one more time for you. If it's not good change, it doesn't make good sense. So, thank you, Wilmington, Delaware. Welcome to the show, Miss Jane Brady and Miss Donyale Hall. Jane Brady is the M. Jane Brady. From
Just Jane is fine.
our past Attorney General, past judge, yes. And if you're a judge, you have to make good what? Decisions. We have candidate Donyale Hall running for Lieutenant Governor. And I think you have to listen to what she's talking about and what she's bringing to the area. I, myself, Steve Washington, am running for 1st District State Senator. You have to listen to what I'm saying and the reason why my platform is so important. I want you to understand we are running as Republicans, and first and foremost, understand that we need black and brown people on both sides of the aisle. See, and if the state's been blue for all of these years, we have to make sure that the puzzle is complete. How can the puzzle be complete if it's just blue and it's just one side or one part? When there's a whole part, or a whole puzzle, there's a whole, the puzzle is a circle, so we have to make sure that that puzzle is complete. So you need people from all sides. So that's where I was going. But anyway, welcome to the show, ladies. How are you? Miss Jane Brady.
Yes.
Talk to me. What brings you here today?
Well, I've been on this channel so many times with Marva and others, and remember Miss Donyale and all the great woman she was. And I'm here today because I believe that we need a dialogue.
Sure.
We need to talk with each other and listen to each other. And I had an idea when the two men got together at the end of the driveway with a beer, one white man, one black man, to show that in the course of the disputes and issues that were occurring, that people of different color could get along, could be friends. And I decided we needed to do something like that, but I don't drink alcohol, and I wanted kids and families there, so I said, not let's get together and have a beer, but lemonade, cookies, cupcakes. And so I came up with the idea of Black and White, Let's Unite. And the idea is to bring people together from different perspectives, share those perspectives, hear each other, not just have people talk, but hear each other and share and build relationships. I believe my background is not a lot different although people look at me differently than many of the people that watch this show and who are minority. I was born in a housing project, Eastlake. I went to George Gray Elementary. I lived at 910 East 28th Street. We moved to Smyrna. I'm one of 7 kids, you know, and I grew up in a very modest background financially. My parents didn't have a lot of money. My dad was out of work for a year with 7 kids once. And so I worked very hard for everything that I've been able to achieve. And my blessing was I had 2 parents who instilled in me work ethic and good character and invested time and energy in helping me become the person that I am. And that is a huge advantage, and I recognize that. But I know what it's like to have no money. I know what it's like to wish you could go to a college and get accepted and then not be able to go because you can't afford it. And so I thought, I need people to understand that when you look at someone, what you think about them might not be who they are. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to learn more about each other. And if we do, I think we can accomplish so much more. And so I really wanted today to bring that out, to encourage people not to look at Republican or Democrat or white or black or young or old, but listen to and learn from each other and share.
I like the avenue that you took when you talked about not poverty, but actually having to go through the valleys to get where you are. And I understand that clearly because, first and foremost, perseverance doesn't have a color.
That's right.
And a lot of times in black and brown communities, or even impoverished communities, we give up. And we give up before we could even see that light at the end of the tunnel. And that's I like what you're saying because it helped me. I mean, in light of some systemic racism and all these things that may have happened, you have to persevere all the way through because when you give up, you got to start all over again. You know, so I believe that's a good segue.
So much of what's being said today is, you know, to surrender to government providing for you. Mm-hmm. And government can never give you what you want. It might give you most of what you need, but not even all of that. My son's adopted. His mom lived in poverty. She was in foster care when I met her. I used to give a speech called "You Don't Have to Be Born Ahead to Get Ahead," and I truly believe that. And I met her when I was giving that speech, and then I always invited the kids to job shadow me for a day. But I wanted to talk mostly to kids who thought doors were closed to them. And I said, don't ever think a door is closed to you until you've tried to open it. And it isn't easy to open doors. I mean, I worked 80, 90-hour weeks, many weeks, many years to get where I am. And it isn't always an easy choice. It isn't always an easy path. But if you set goals and you believe in yourself and you don't let other people dissuade you, then you can accomplish what you set out to do. Sure. I just think that's an important message.
Good. And I'd like to introduce you to Ms. Donyale Hall, and I just want to hear what you have to say in regards to you persevering, because you do have a story.
Yes,
and
I
I'm
do.
sure people want to hear it.
Well, I'll take a few seconds just to introduce myself.
Sure.
I'm a businesswoman. I'm a wife. My fun fact is I'm a mother of 10 beautiful children, 6 of whom have profoundly emancipated themselves from my wallet. I've got 4 full-time remote learners at home right now. That's a tale in and of itself. Yeah. And I am also a veteran of the United States Air Force. I served in the early 90s in support of Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. My father before me was a career Air Force guy. He was a Vietnam veteran. He lost his life last year and succumbed to some of the things that were from his exposure to Agent Orange. And I have 2 sons that are proudly carrying on the family legacy of service in the Air Force now. So I'm running this year because as a member of the marginalized communities, those are the communities that I feel have been forgotten or overlooked. I believe that the hardships and those valleys that I've had to overcome, speak volumes to having to persevere and having to press through and not being able to find accessible resources. It's not that resources are not available, they're just not readily accessible.
Sure.
So, I want to make sure that we're doing things to address, the achievement gap in the education system. We deeply need some reforms there. I've seen firsthand with my children in the last 2 decades going through public education, what that looks like, and we have to prepare them because they're going to have to push their way through and persevere through those valleys to be able to forge a viable pathway to opportunity. So I'm a huge proponent of making sure that we give people resources. As a small business owner, 37% of our businesses in COVID have shut permanently. They're going to need resources. So we have to help people find ways, meaningful ways of being able to persevere through what we're going through now. I think that's going to require some people who've been there, done that, have the trophy, the badge, the certificate, the poster child for you can do it, to be able to help us navigate our way forward.
Awesome. And so if we speak in terms of your platform, or in fact, can you help the community understand what the job of the lieutenant governor is and what it is that she really does? Or
Well,
he or she?
There's only 2 constitutional duties of the
Sure.
lieutenant governor. One is to preside over the Senate, and the other is to chair the Board of Pardons. The Board of Pardons is a phenomenal opportunity to give people a true second chance once they have served their time in the correctional system, and they've made a positive step forward and are deserving of the opportunity of a second chance to be able to get good quality paying jobs. That's an opportunity to do that. So that's a good role to have in the Senate. In case there is a tie-break vote, the lieutenant governor gets to cast that vote. So I think it's critical to have somebody that will be representative of your values, because in case that vote needs to be cast, you want to make sure that that person will support the things that you believe in. So I'm very open and honest about where I stand on the issues, and tell people, to vote your values on November 3rd for sure. Outside of that, the lieutenant governor has a lot of influence into various committees and so forth, and the things that are meaningful to me that I would prioritize. I plan on being a strong advocate for those things. So I plan on being able to use the influence of the office to move the needle for people.
Awesome. And when you said the Board of Pardons, I want to come right down your street, because a lot of people, they don't understand what's the difference between the Board of Parole and the Board of Pardons.
Right.
So I'm asking you, can you kind of explain that to our viewing audience?
Sure. So the Board of Parole deals with when and if you are released from prison into the community under supervision by a probation or parole officer. And that involves terms and conditions of where you live and when and how often you have to check in. The Board of Pardons is comprised of elected and appointed officials, the lieutenant governor, the treasurer, the secretary of state, and others. And they decide whether, when you have rehabilitated and become a positive member of the community, whether you should be excused or pardoned for your past behavior that was not compliant with the law. And so people who go to work in the banks, when the banks were coming into the state, there were a lot of people applying for pardons because to work in the banks you had to be bonded and insured, and people with convictions couldn't get that. And so you would go in front of the Board of Pardons to get a pardon so that you could get a job that required you to be bonded or insured. Some people couldn't get into the schools or get the job that they wanted because of their past history, and they had reformed their behavior, grown up and matured, and they would come before the Board of Pardons to get excused for that behavior. Now, in most instances, you can also get the record expunged, which means deleted from your record. That wasn't historically the case, but it is now.
So, and that's interesting that you said that. I'm going to ask you this question as well. So, when we speak in terms of expungement or pardon, a pardon is basically What happens with a pardon?
A pardon is you are allowed to say you are no longer convicted of the
Okay.
offense.
Now,
But the
and-
arrest record and the record of your conviction is available to people who want to know your prior criminal history.
Okay.
It'll
Now-
say pardon on your criminal history.
Okay. Slack on it. Stop doing it. Don't do that again. Pretty much. So we speak in terms of an expungement. Is an expungement really an expungement where it's wiped away from the system?
It's
Or-
not totally,
That's
but
what.
but it's not allowed to be utilized except for very limited purposes.
Such as, or including.
Well, it is retained, but it's not physically visible. So if you go in to ask for your criminal history, it would no longer be on your criminal history.
Mm-hmm.
If you went into the state police and asked for your criminal history, it wouldn't be there any longer. They would have retained one set of records of the incident. But other than that, when I was a young deputy attorney general working in the family court as a prosecutor, when a person turned 18, we shredded all of our records. If they weren't convicted as an adult, we literally shredded files on a regular basis based on the age of the offender because they were automatically, there were certain offenses that were automatically expunged and weren't allowed to be considered. And so that's what happens to agencies that have information about that. Word goes out that the expungement's been granted and they're to shred those records.
And I ask that question because sometimes an offense could be expunged, but then when that person goes to seek a job or looking for a job, he or she experiences the employer has gone back on the internet and found the incident,
Yep.
and that stops them from getting the job. As lieutenant governor, what would you do to even stop that information or make an expungement where it doesn't show up, period? What
That's
could you
an
do?
interesting question, and I honestly have not given that a whole heck of a lot of thought. My initial gut reaction is to figure out how you would be able to even remove those things from the internet, and I think that that's the much broader and more difficult question. They say that anytime anything goes out into the cloud and the atmosphere, it's there for life. So I don't even know how we would be able to address such
I
a
think
thing.
the only way to do that would be to have a law that says that an employer's not allowed to consider a
Right.
conviction. But in a small community, people know. I mean,
Sure.
back in the day, right, when you think about it, everybody not only knew who the town drunk was, they knew his story.
Right.
His wife had left him and taken the kids and he didn't know where they were and he
Exactly.
started drinking or whatever the situation was. They not only knew that he was the town drunk, they knew his story. Today, we're so much more diverse and we don't have the kind of personal relationships that they used to in the small towns. But still people know about what you did. You can't erase people's memories. You can't erase events. You can't prevent a victim from telling people what they think you did to them, whether you were expunged or not. And so it's not really going to eliminate it. I remember a man came to me who had a sex offense and was waiting for it to get expunged so he could run for public office. And I said, well, are you prepared to answer questions about it? And he goes, why? If it's expunged, I don't have to answer questions about it. I said, people in the community know what you were accused of. They know what you were convicted of. They know you went to jail. They're going to tell your opponent, if they're friends with them, you're going to have an explanation. And he decided, of course, not to run for office. But and I don't know that he was considering what office he was considering. But you can't erase people's memories and events from your life. And there's always going to be. You have to manage your life as you have chosen to live it, even when you were young and maybe not as mature, not exercising good judgment. Consequences occur from everything you do.
Speaking about the consequences, and let's speak in terms of the system, parole system, judiciary system, being incarcerated. As a member of the Board of Parole, I see that education does impact our decision-making process. and I'm a firm believer that a lot of crime could really be lessened if we were getting the knowledge and skills that we need on the elementary school level, and we begin to practice those skills where we're able to perfect those skills. Now, a lot of times, a lot of folk that are getting in trouble, they don't think about the magnitude of the crime in which they have set forth. But when I'm thinking in terms of our education system and people, you have to understand this is very, very serious around the world, not just this country. Education is the key. Education is the field that make all other fields possible. So when we're speaking in terms of education, a lot of children today are not being successful in our education system. Although we do have funding, a lot of people say it's the funding. I personally believe it's the design of our curriculum. We operate in Delaware under a Common Core state standard, which has been actually developed or designed by a gentleman named Bill Gates. So in this curriculum, as we all know about Bill Gates, he has a higher order of thought, and that's where he thinks. So the Common Core curriculum speaks to a higher order of thought. So it's not reaching, in my opinion, just mine, not yours. Okay, your opinion, your perception is your reality, just like mine. But when I think in terms of the curriculum, it speaks to middle and upper middle class. It doesn't speak to sometimes black and brown communities. It doesn't speak to poverty. And when I say that because of the crime that I see out here. And where's your first part? In the home, then you go to the school. So I'm a firm believer, and this is what I'm going to do. My first piece of legislation that I would craft, should I be elected into the office of District 1 State Senator, is to design a curriculum inclusive of the parent and the teachers that speak to the interests of the child. Because I'm a firm believer that your passion comes from interest. When you're interested in something, you become passionate about that.
Yes.
If you're not interested in it, you back off of it. Well, in our curriculum, there's a lot of students that are graduating not knowing how to write in cursive, not knowing how to take and tell time on an analog clock, not knowing the long division without use of a calculator, not knowing how to take and pass an assessment. So we have to make sure that in schools that every child has the opportunity to be successful, whether it's a higher order of thought or not. Because here's the deal with Common Core. It's based on assessments. 4 summative assessments, which are worth 70 points, and 6 formative assessments, which were worth 30 points. So if I have 4 assessments and I'm a senior ready to graduate and I made the honor roll, I made A's all my life, I make 1 bad grade on the summative and I only have 3 left in my senior year, how can I make that A? So we want to make sure that we're allowing kids to be successful, whether they take general education classes or higher order of thought education classes. But everybody has to grow.
When I was in school, we chose, beginning in 8th grade, we chose a track of general studies, college prep, or vocational. And when we started the vocational, and I tend to fundamentally disagree with creating separate vocational districts, okay? That was not a way I would have done it. But we had vocational schools that were doing a pretty fair job. Fletcher Brown and Hodgson up here, downstate. But they started getting competitive in academics because they were an environment where they could ask the student to leave if there was a problem. And so they became more elitist, and they started talking about tech academics, and they started promoting competitive academics. And I think there's a tendency now, or a trend now, that they're looking at going back to truly focusing on vocational training. And what an opportunity that would present. I don't think they should be in separate districts, as I said, but if if we had the opportunity, and all of them are full, you have a lottery to get in. Obviously, that means we need more, right? We need to offer what the students need. And I don't think people have been looking at what do the students need in deciding what our education system should do. It should be focused on who's learning what and what do they need. I just had a press conference yesterday, and we talked about some of the issues with the decline of performance of various aspects of Delaware government and Delaware as a state and its economy. But one of the things that was remarkable on the Department of Education's own website is the fact that only 58% of the kids who leave school are either ready to go forward to an academic environment like college or into a career. 58%. That means we're throwing 40-some% of our kids on the street with no future, and we're not giving them the skills they need to be ready for it. And it seems to me that we should design our education system to provide the skills and knowledge and technology exposure that kids need to succeed in an academic or career environment. You know, we're not saying we have to teach you how to be a nice person or set the table, right, or table manners. But I am saying if you want to make a living, you have to have skills. And we're not focused on what do our students need and then provide the education system that provides that gives them that. We're starting with what do we want to teach? What do we think is important? Not what do our kids need? And because of our 0% job growth in Delaware, when kids do leave school, they're leaving Delaware because they can't find jobs here. And we're having this huge brain drain. And you know how I feel about education. You know I've been adamant about it. I've just been involved in it for most of my life and promoting changes in education. And we should have the money follow the student.
Yes.
So students can choose their school, parents and students can choose their school. And the money should follow the student. And we just had that big settlement, which may or may not end up resolving the case because there has to be a lot that happens in between now and when they fully settle the case. It's all conditional. But with regard to equality of funding, that helps equalize the funding quite a bit when the money that the state is allocating per student follows that student and people can choose their school. When charter schools were designed, initially, the first charter schools were designed to provide a model to public schools on local control, parental engagement, student involvement, to try and present the opportunity to learn in a different way that brought, as you say, got the kids' attention, got them engaged in what they were learning. And the Department of Education and people who are advocating education view charter schools as competition and undesirable. But in fact, we could learn a lot from the success that we've seen in charter schools rather than pushing them away and viewing them as the enemy. Is embrace what they're doing well and right and rejecting that which you think they aren't. But we aren't doing that. We aren't being open-minded. We aren't thinking of the kid first.
No, we're not.
And their opportunities for the future. We need to do that.
Can I chime in as a mom?
Yes,
Because
definitely.
you struck an accord with me when you said that you wanted to bring the parents to the table.
Yes.
I think that's a very missing element. I felt very unheard as a mother about how we move forward in remote education in particular. That's an epic failure. I mean, I have a 10-year-old that sits at my dining room table with a little Chromebook that she's expected to split a screen on and be able to stay in the Zoom simultaneously and then navigate to somewhere else at another location in the internet. My child breaks down and cries. And I say, close it up, you're done for the day. And then I circle back with the teacher because these things are not working like they want them to do. They were not working the way that they were supposed to in the spring. Why on earth did we roll out in the fall the spring's failures? We had accredited homeschooling programs in neighboring states. And Madam Chair brought up an excellent point that those dollars need to follow the child. Why can't they follow them to homeschooling options?
That's right.
But we're afraid of vouchers. I don't know why we're afraid of vouchers. I intend to find out why we're afraid of vouchers.
Yes, good.
But that is the right of the parent to find what works best for their child. I have parents that are telling me all over the state that their child that had special needs can't get the wraparound services that only the school districts could provide, because they would have to take them in for, some obscure amount of time that doesn't fit into their home work-life schedule. Parents are having to figure out right now whether they work and pay their bills or try to be a support. And there are a lot of parents who cannot even be a support to their children. And my concern as a parent is that I see the education achievement gap glaring. And right now in this environment, parents had one of two options: to try to partake in a hybrid learning environment with the public schools, or if they could afford it, they put their children in private schools, who opened up fully and have had zero problems with it. So I don't understand why we are still chasing our tail about what to do. I see the problem being that the can was kicked. It came out of the executive branch, who kicked it to the Department of Education. At the Department of Education level, it was kicked down to the district superintendents, and no two schools are operating the same, because the thought process was, we'll leave that local control to the schools who know best how to service their communities. We are not being serviced properly, and it's time that we recognize that this is not working and figure out a corrective measure. But the one thing that I thought resonated with me when you said bringing parents about the Common Core, back in 1999, when we talked about No Child Left Behind provisions, and then when President Obama became president, he realigned the Department of Education so that supplemental education services who were being housed on the external side of the schools, we had to bring that back into the schools. Well, the schools were already struggling with how to deal with just the regular curriculum and get these children taught with the limited resources that they had internally. Now the children who were struggling academically had to have their extras taught in lieu of their regular core program.
Sure.
So my child was pulled out of one class to plug a deficit in another class, and they did this without even giving me a phone call and telling me what they were doing. It wasn't until my child came to me and said, "Mom, I'm in this teacher's class instead of being in my math class." And so I get on the phone and I said, "Why did you do this?" Because it's considered a regular part of their core curriculum, and we don't have to ask your permission. Wow. I feel that, we have just taken way too much away from the parents by having our children in public education. We need to have a voice in how they are being educated. And I think it's criminal for the public education system to think that they can usurp my parental rights and do what they want with my child because I'm obliged to send them. Which goes back to my point, let's have an open discussion about where and how my child is educated and having those dollars follow. I agree 100%.
And I think if you talk about getting parents more involved, you have to think about neighborhood schools, and you have to think about the city of Wilmington and how it used to educate its kids, and what happened back in, the 70s and 80s with taking the kids out of the city, creating this non-contiguous, which means adjacent, non-adjacent school district where you have this part and this part comprise the school district. Ridiculous. And parents in the city are very unhappy, but no one's listening to them. There are a few good advocates here in the city for bringing the school district back to the city. There are some people who think we have too many school districts. I'm not weighing in on that. And whether Wilmington should have its own and Christina should be separate or what. But I will say this. Most of the people who live in the city want their kids to go to school in the city where they can walk to the school. The school can be a community center of activity. They can have after-school programs. They don't have to worry about their kids being bused on the highway. Most parents I talk to want a neighborhood school.
I mean, well, that's in every city. In every major city, there is a neighborhood school. Going back to your point, but I want to say this right fast. You were talking, and then you said something in regards to the executive branch. So we can't assume, and I'm definitely not assuming, that everyone that's viewing knows anything about what the executive branch is?
That would be out of the governor's office.
Just checking.
Yes, point of clarity made.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay. So, yeah, so, sometimes they don't, well, what's the executive branch? But you are making a very good point. Community schools, I went to one. I went to Lower School. I went to Bayard Middle School. I went to Wilmington High School. I was then bused out to McCain High School where I graduated. In the 10th grade, I went to McCain. Now, the interesting part about this is that their reason for busing us was because of, they said, the resources. And I'm a firm believer that it wasn't resources, it was taxes and us living in those houses out in the suburbs. So it was a housing issue, not a school issue. So instead of me being able to live in your neighborhood, you allowed me to go to school in your neighborhood, but you can't stay here. That's systemic racism. I just think that's a part of the issue. But that's just my thought, not yours. So I'm thinking that a public school, a public high school, that would be dynamic. Here's the question. Do we still allow government to control our curriculum? Curriculum means everything as far as a child is growing and as far as a child's interest is in school. If I'm failing at a curriculum that I'm not interested in, my self-esteem is going to drop. I'm not going to care about grades. I'm going to care about what's attractive. And what's attractive to a lot of these kids that are not doing well in school is what's going on in the streets. Mm-hmm. And what's going on in the streets is that guy over there look like he got a lot of money. I want some of that money too. What can I do? Because I'm not going to school. I'm not learning nothing. But my mom, she can't even afford to buy me a pair of sneakers. What am I going to do? So that all comes back to a curriculum design, because I'm going to tell you, I know that when you are interested in something, you put a lot of time, and then you're passionate about your interests. It's not about money at first, because passion doesn't follow money. Money follows passion.
Yeah, I let me just say counter to that a little bit.
Sure.
Is the fact that you need to have certain basic skills to make it.
Big time.
Whether you're going to have your own business, work for somebody else, give change at McDonald's. I realize the cash register now tells you how much change to give, but you might have a cash register that doesn't do that. You have to be able to figure that out. So there are basic skills that you need to acquire. Now, what's really cool, my son is now 13. And of course, I've had a picture into his education like we haven't had in recent years. And I'm really happy to have it. I've been relatively satisfied. One of the cool things they did is they learned about geography of the United States and other things through learning about the different Native American tribes that lived in those areas and what resources they had and all the social studies stuff that you learn. But then they took the peace agreement that was engaged in by the Iroquois and others and related it to the U.S. Constitution and brought, for the first time, they're teaching U.S. history by using the Native American experience and bringing quotes from Benjamin Franklin commending the way that the Native American tribes engaged in their a confederation of alliances and how they allocated. They actually had a higher and lower house, like our Senate and House of Representatives in Congress. And it related to that. And it takes a little work. Now, I have to tell you, my son would not have been as excited about it if I hadn't been as excited about it, right? And I'm going, look at this cool stuff. And they even have a 25th Amendment equivalent in this Indian Native tribe agreement. And so, I was very excited about it. And so I engaged with him about it. But there are certain skills you need to learn, certain basics. Now, how you learn them, I thought that was a really imaginative way to expand how you learn about U.S. history, to include a portion that had been neglected in the past. When I went to school, we didn't learn much about the Native Americans and coming across the Bering Strait and all of the issues there. And so it incorporated information that was about the diversity of our backgrounds and the role of, now he's into the European explorers from Spain and everything. But it brought it with a different perspective, and I thought it was a really cool way to present the curriculum that was different and and responsive to people who think that we shouldn't just grow up thinking that the first people here were the Pilgrims and then, you know, George Washington and Benjamin Franklin were here, and skip in between and skip before. And I just thought it was a really good presentation.
And I agree with the basics, because that's exactly what I'm speaking to, the basic skills. You can have the basic skills and do well, you know, but we're teaching right now for rigor, and I get it, but if you have the basics, we can then get to that point. So
Yeah, I will say one other thing. My son knows how to do division and multiplication. My son's challenged a little bit, but he knows how to do division and multiplication. Then they start teaching him other ways to do it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
The
oh
new
my
math.
gosh, just stop.
The new math, because
Stop.
I've seen at
You
least
know,
Yes.
four.
Singapore.
and
I've
she
seen
said,
4
well,
different versions
some
of the new
of the
math.
students might not get it this way, so I'm going
Yeah.
to teach it this way too.
Sure.
I'm required to teach these 3 different ways you can get to the same answer. I'm like, when he gets it, leave him alone.
Yes.
Don't talk to him about that. Send him out of the room so he doesn't forget or get confused, you know? And so he can do long division, but not if you show him 3 different ways to do it,
Right.
you know?
And from what you're saying, I heard something that we've been talking about: parent engagement, parent involvement. And a lot of times in the communities here, it's not that, because of a parent may not be able to get to one of them suburban schools.
That's right.
And a parent may have to work because that parent might be a single family due to massive incarceration. But when we speak in terms of
Well, actually, I
the
think
mass
it goes back to the
incarceration,
Great Society and moving men out of families.
Exactly.
That was not a good move
no.
by the
So
government.
it's interesting that one area touches the next and touches the next. We need solutions. As a lieutenant governor, the only thing that a lieutenant governor is going to do is be over the Senate and the part. It has to be something else. Who steps in to take the place of the governor should something happen to the governor?
That would be me.
Would it be the lieutenant governor?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, what about Speaker of the House?
Oh, they come after Secretary of State. I
They
think.
come after the Secretary of State.
That's how I think. It's third in line is the Secretary of State
Okay,
in Delaware,
okay.
I think.
Because you'd be surprised. A lot of people don't know that.
No.
So basically, there should be more of an involvement with the lieutenant governor as opposed to presiding over
Yeah.
the.
And you know, the lieutenant governor can be of a different political party than the governor. We elect our
Really?
lieutenant governor differently, separately from the governor.
Hmm.
So, Donyale, we had that happen once with S.B. Wu and Mike Castle.
Oh, wow.
We had a Democrat lieutenant governor and a Republican governor. And so, but I have no doubt that that young lady, if she's elected, is going to be heard on these issues, and education is one of her top ones.
Just imagine somebody trying to put a gag on me.
Yeah.
Just imagine.
And you know, you talk about what happened with busing. I mean, I have to be honest with you. How horrible and objective desegregation, not integration, not helping us get together, not helping to build relationships, just desegregation. And what they did was they moved, and I saw it in my nieces and nephews' classrooms and schools. They moved a class from here who sat in a different place here but didn't interact with the other kids in that school. And they moved a class from here who sat in a classroom here and didn't interact with the other kids from the school. And it didn't really do anything toward integration.
See, there you go. So we have about 10 minutes. Marva, how are you?
I'm just listening. I'm just.
So listen, I want to give a couple minutes for each of us to tell the reasons as to why we are running for office, because it's very important that the community knows that it doesn't matter what party you in. It matters the person that's going to represent
right.
you and your interests. I happen to be running for District 1 State Senator because I'm very interested in education, how we can make education better in the state. I am running for office simply because I happen to know about unreported data when it comes down to public housing and affordable housing. I happen to be a commissioner on the Wilmington Housing Authority. I am also running for office simply because I go into the prison as a Board of Parole board member, and I see that The unreported data is that 65% of our inmates are special ed. Well, how come we don't have special ed services in the prison? They say that we do, but unreported data says that it's not happening because people that come out go back into the community, not being able to get a job, and repeat. So we have to make sure that we get individualized education plans for some of our inmates who were learning disabled when they were in school. Now they're still learning disabled when they're in the prison, but they do not have the resources. So those are 3 reasons why I'm running. I'm also interested in the veterans, and I'm interested in health care, and we can have that topic eventually. But I want to hear yours, Donyale.
Well, again, just to circle back, I'm running on a platform of
Yes.
effective government. I think that everybody who pays taxes in the state of Delaware would like to see the best bang for their buck. So I just want to make sure that we do the right thing by our taxpayer dollars, make sure we have transparency in our spending. Delaware, in a lot of people's opinion, doesn't have a revenue problem, it has a spending problem. So I'm the girl that wants you to show me the money. I want to be able to see where the dollars are coming from, where they're going to, and if we have measurable outcomes and metrics in our spending so that we make sure that the programs that we have online are actually reaching the intended recipients and doing what we need to do to increase things like job growth in the state of Delaware. We definitely need to have a strong economic development plan.
Sure.
I want to make sure that we're doing any and everything that we can to develop and attract businesses to make Delaware their home. I've actually incorporated hundreds of businesses. Some of them make Delaware their home, and some of them are outside of the state of Delaware. We love to be able to attract businesses to come here so that we can see quality jobs come and bring a good quality wage to our families. The underlying socioeconomics has staggering effects. If you take a look at poverty, it has a direct correlation to crime. And so if we address those issues, the satellite issues will be self-resolving. I really believe that. So we got to make sure that we do the things that bring people to office, that offer a business acumen and can have a strong strategic plan moving forward. COVID has definitely showed us a lot of the cracks that we already had underlying in Delaware. The seams broke wide open, and now it's going to take some very strong corrective measures. We need to have strong leadership to be able to address those things. Education, yes, it is one of my top priorities. With 10 children, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of our education system. We need to have some strong fixes there. We certainly don't want to continue to see over 40% of our children neither career or college ready. So in order to address those things, we have to give our kids viable pathways to the trades as well as college pathways. We have to address the education achievement gap by making sure that the dollars that we already have allocated toward education are closing that gap. I will be a strong advocate for those things. Most of you have already heard that I am the Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor. I just want to talk a few minutes about what that means. We need to make sure that we vote our values in the state of Delaware. We've seen from the divisive national rhetoric that that is a distraction, and I would encourage you not to be caught up in the distraction at the state level, because COVID has illustrated clearly that our governors have had sole control over what has happened in their states. And if you want to make sure that things here locally are better, you have to elect people who will have that kind of decision-making authority and power to be able to change your very unhappy existence in most people's cases, in my eyes. So I'm asking for your support on November 3rd. If you're coming out to the polls, if you are mailing in your ballots, please make sure that you find my name at the top right column. I'm right across from the president. I was so excited that they put Lieutenant Governor's race right on the top, on the right column. So people are already screenshotting their ballots, and you have to understand that you have the ability to split your ticket. So just because you're a registered Democrat, you can vote for a Republican. I encourage everybody to do your homework, that deep dive, find out about your candidates, vote your values, make sure that the people that you put in office are going to do the things that you expect them to do. Accountability is everything. You can find my number online. If you don't have it, it's 399-8838. I do answer my phone from the crack of dawn till much later than my husband would like, but I'm accessible. And that's one of the things that I want you to know, is that I will always be willing to listen to your voice, your complaint, and make that my priority is to serve you. Thank you.
Wow. And I wish you well. And,
Thank you.
You know, the power, I'm telling you, we have to have people in office that looks out for our interests, not just placeholders. I mean, in the first district, there's been a gentleman in office for 44 years. That's more than half my life. So, like I said, change is good. So we have to understand that people in Dover have to look out for your welfare, on your behalf, to make sure that there's positive growth in you and where you live and in this state. Ms. Jane Brady, thank you for allowing me to share my platform with the Republican Party and accepting me. You know, sometimes we get into positions just because they already have you down inside that good old boy network. So I'm just glad that I'm given the opportunity to run as a Republican in the Republican Party, because I do have the best interests at heart for the community, for this state. So we have to make sure, especially in Delaware, where I'm born and raised all of my life, that we have to get down Dover and make sure our education system is better or improved. Make sure public housing where they have mandates where these folks can get educated and then move into affordable housing. Make sure that our prisons are getting a necessary benefit with education so that they can come out and be productive citizens. But I'm thanking you in this place. Marva, thank you very much. Ms. Brady, do you have anything else that you would like to add prior to us leaving for today?
Well, you know, I just really want to say that I believe that strong communities are made up of strong individuals, and that the importance of encouraging individuals to develop to be their best is really understated many times. I think that we have tremendous diversity on the Republican ticket this year, both racially and gender. Of the 5 statewide candidates we have, 4 are women. And we have a great opportunity, I think, in Delaware to bring more diverse views to the state General Assembly. We've been under single-party rule for so long, and it just has taken us downward.
Sure.
As opposed to upward and onward.
Thank you. Marva?
And I'd like to thank you for taking time out with me, because the other day I voted. Oh, I'm so excited. And some people I knew, I could feel, but some I didn't. And I asked Mr. Washington to go down the line with me on both parties. I didn't say I voted for what you told me, but I'm just saying. And but the thing of it is, I listened to you, I learned, you took your time, and you made me comfortable in my vote.
Good.
Miss Brady, when he got through with me, I was comfortable. And my husband, when he started, brought the ballot to me, he said he wanted to see me vote. I said, no, no, my vote is private. Sure. And you might say, well, it's your husband. No, that's a very private thing to me. And I let him know that I had talked to you about it, and and thank you so much.
Very well.
Because now, Miss Brady, Miss Donyale, my vote is in. So let me say to you, I am so honored again to have had these beautiful young ladies with me today, and you're always welcome at any time for any reason. Please don't let this be your last time.
Okay.
And Mr. Washington, thank you for just being you. And the slogan for him is, someone said a long time ago, whatever you do, stay Steve.
Yes, ma'am.
Viewers, have a great day. Thank you so much for listening to us, and we'll see you again very soon.